When installing or maintaining electrical panel boards, one must always adhere to the working space requirements outlined in the National Electrical Code, or NEC. These requirements are put in place to ensure the safety of personnel who may be working on or near the energized equipment. The NEC specifies minimum distances for working space in front of electrical equipment such as panel boards, switchboards, and motor control centers. These distances are determined by the voltage of the equipment and the condition of the space opposite the equipment. Condition 1 requires 3 feet of working space, applies where there are exposed live parts on one side and no live or grounded parts on the other side of the working space, or where exposed live parts are on both sides effectively guarded by insulating materials. Condition 2 requires 3.5 feet of working space and applies where there are exposed live parts on one side and grounded parts on the other side of the working space. Concrete, brick, or tile walls are considered grounded. Condition 3 requires 4 feet of working space and applies where there are exposed live parts on both sides of the working space that are not guarded. The working space must be clear and unobstructed, allowing for safe access and egress. The width of the working space must be at least 30 inches, or the width of the equipment, whichever is greater. The height of the working space must be at least 6.5 feet, or the height of the equipment, whichever is greater. The working space must be clear from the floor to the height required by 110.26 subsection of paragraph 3. Now, to directly address the question of whether a door's width can be considered as part of the required working space for a panel board, the answer is no. The code requires that the working space be dedicated solely to providing adequate room for personnel to safely perform their tasks. While a door provides access to the area, it doesn't inherently contribute to the unobstructed working space in front of the electrical equipment. Even if the panel board is mounted adjacent to a 36-inch wide door, the width of the door cannot be factored into the calculation of the required 30-inch wide working space. The entire 30-inch width must be clear and free from obstructions. The door is meant to provide access to that working space, but not to be part of it. The reason for this distinction is that the door's position can change. It can be opened or closed, thus impacting the availability of the working space. The code mandates a consistently clear and unobstructed space, regardless of the door's position. It is also important to consider the depth of the working space. This depth, measured from the front of the electrical equipment, is determined by the voltage level of the equipment and the conditions on the opposite side of the working space. For example, for equipment operating at 150 volts to ground, a minimum working space depth of 3 feet is required if there are exposed live parts on one side and no live or grounded parts on the other side of the working space, or where exposed live parts are on both sides effectively guarded by insulating materials. If there are exposed live parts on one side and grounded parts on the other side, the required depth increases to 3.5 feet. And if there are exposed live parts on both sides of the working space that are not guarded, the required depth is 4 feet. These distances increase as the voltage level increases. The code also addresses the illumination of the working space. Adequate lighting is essential for safe work practices. The NEC requires that the working space around electrical equipment be adequately illuminated. The lighting must be sufficient to allow personnel to clearly see the equipment and any potential hazards. The location of lighting fixtures should be carefully considered to minimize glare and shadows. In addition to the working space requirements, the NEC also specifies requirements for access and egress. The working space must have a clear path for personnel to enter and exit. The path must be wide enough to accommodate a person carrying tools or equipment. If the working space has only one entrance, the entrance must be located so that personnel can readily escape in the event of an emergency. If the working space has 2 or more entrances, the entrances must be arranged so that personnel can easily move between them. The height of the entrance must be at least 6.5 feet. It is also important to consider the environmental conditions of the working space. Electrical equipment should be protected from moisture, dust, and other contaminants. The temperature of the working space should be maintained within the equipment's operating temperature range. If the environmental conditions are not suitable for the equipment should be installed in an enclosure that provides adequate protection. Furthermore, any alterations or additions to existing electrical installations must comply with the current edition of the NEC. This includes ensuring that the working space meets the current requirements. If an existing installation does not meet the current requirements, it may be necessary to modify the installation to bring it into compliance. This could involve relocating the equipment, increasing the size of the working space, or adding additional lighting. When working on electrical equipment, it is essential to follow safe work practices. This includes wearing appropriate personal protective equipment, such as safety glasses, gloves, and insulated tools. Before working on any electrical equipment, the power should be turned off and the equipment should be properly grounded. Always verify that the power is off before beginning work. It is also important to be aware of the potential hazards associated with electrical work. This includes the risk of electric shock, arc flash, and arc blast. Electrical shock can occur when a person comes into contact with an energized conductor. Arc flash is a dangerous condition that can occur when a short circuit occurs in electrical equipment. Arc blast is a pressure wave that can be generated by an arc flash. These hazards can cause serious injuries or even death. By following safe work practices and adhering to the NEC requirements, the risks associated with electrical work can be minimized. Always consult with a qualified electrician if you have any questions or concerns about electrical safety. Remember, electrical safety is everyone's responsibility. Understanding and following the rules for working space around electrical equipment can prevent accidents and ensure the safety of personnel. So, in conclusion, when considering the working space for a panel board, the width of a door, even one adjacent to the panel board, cannot be considered as part of the required unobstructed working space. The working space must be maintained as a dedicated area for safe access and operation. Always refer to the latest edition of the NEC for specific requirements and consult with a qualified professional for any complex installations or interpretations.